Good morning. My name is Mike McClanahan. I'm General Manager, Penwell Gable Funeral Home, Crematory and Cemetery here in Hutchinson. Our location here houses our funeral home, funeral chapel, crematory. Our cemetery is about 5 miles west, out on Rails Hill, 5 miles west of town. We're one of the oldest funeral homes in not only Hutchinson but Reno County. Our original location was at Sherman and Poplar at the original Johnson & Sons building, and we moved into this location. It was built, I believe, in 1988, 88 or 89. And so we've been located here at 300 East 30th for over 20 years. The kind of a brief history of funeral service and how it came about were basically taking care of the deceased loved ones of families. Basically, hundreds of years ago, families would have to take care of their own dead. A lot of times the families all lived together. You'd have grandma and grandpa and maybe the in-laws and everybody living in the same home, especially in rural communities. If a death occurred, the family was basically responsible for either taking care of their loved one, burying it on their own land, burying a couple acres away on a hill in their own land, whatever the case may be, or if they had a church in town or around the area, a rural setting, there may be a church cemetery behind the church. So if a death occurred, they'd take care of having services, burial there at the church, behind the church cemetery. A lot of the names of towns and cemeteries and places stemmed from what the original church or the original homestead name may have been. If a large family had a large home and farm area where they had several burials of their family, and it was the Jones family, then that may be the Jonestown Township or Jonestown Cemetery, things like that may have stemmed or come about. Basically, if you've ever gone to any viewings, visitations, things like this where you go and pay your respects to loved ones, sign a register book, those types of things, all that took place in the individual's home. So if the death occurred, the family would just have the body laying in state in their living room for friends, neighbors, folks to come by, pay their respects or sit with the family before the burial took place. As time kind of progressed and families decided they wanted something different for their loved ones, that's when basically the first caskets in the United States came about. People would contract through furniture stores, cabinet makers, companies like that or businesses like that had the capability to not only build something but had the wood, supplies, things on hand to do that. So they would fashion these rough model caskets for that person. They would deliver the casket to the home. The body would be placed in the casket and literally put on blocks of ice, 2-3 large chunks of ice, so they could hold the body for a few days to slow down that process of decomposition so that they could have a couple days for people to come in and then have the burial. Kind of as time progressed and near to the Civil War period is kind of when you started to see the actual modernization of the embalming process or preserving of the body for a longer period of time in the United States, being able then to have a service or something later on rather than a couple, 1-2 days. Especially during the Civil War time especially during the battles where maybe someone died in the battlefield of Georgia and they needed to take the body by covered wagon or whatever transportation available back to Kentucky or somewhere else where the loved ones' families lived. So a rough means of embalming and preservation took place. It was a very old-fashioned way of doing that, but basically just was a dehydration process of the body and a lot of cosmetics and basic things that were applied during that period of time. But that is kind of how that embalming or preservation process started to evolve in the United States. The other process that started to evolve were these cabinet makers, furniture makers, responding to a request to the family that we don't have enough room in our small house. Our church is too far away, whatever the case may be, where they requested you may have a large garage or shed attached to your workshop to your building. So what these furniture makers and places started to do were to clean out those areas, provide seating, being able to manufacture the casket, take custody of the remains, bringing the body to the furniture store, placing the casket, and setting up those areas for a viewing, making it more accommodating for larger groups of people. Taking the body to the church then, having services, transportation. So those basically started to be the first funeral homes, or homes for funerals. And where that came from, then also, people would buy larger houses in the community, remodel what used to be bedrooms, maybe downstairs, knocking out walls, remodeling bedrooms, living rooms, making those into the first chapels like you're in right now. Maybe that family then would go ahead and live upstairs at that house while they ran their business during the day. Then that evolved into removal services, getting the body from the home and bringing everything over to the funeral home and doing the embalming process, having everything taking place there rather than the home. That then in turn evolved into ambulance services, where funeral homes were contacted by the police or sheriff's departments of those communities using their hearses or funeral coaches as an ambulance before the ambulances evolved. That way they would make the removal from a wreck or crime scene or the home or whatever the case would be. That way investigations and things could take place, as rough as they were back then, investigation process. But then the hearses became kind of the first ambulance services, and everything is kind of split off and evolved from there. As I mentioned, the chapel, once again, was kind of designed in the past as a place where people could have the separation from their home, their church, accommodating size, space, whatever the case may be, in order to come to a separate location and have the services, viewing, prayer services for their loved ones rather than their own establishments. We'll kind of see a couple things today that we've also kind of stepped on and out of giving people opportunity to do things. We'll have a room over on the west end of the building that we'll look at as our community room that we'll gather in and take a couple questions and some time there. What that is for is not only for an overflow area if people fill up our chapel, but it's also for a time for families to greet before and after services. A lot of times a church or business or friends will want to have a lunch or reception for families. We've got that capability of someone to do that there. Once again, if they don't want to be at their home, don't want to worry about the cleanup, don't want to worry about the space involved, then we've got that option for families to go ahead and be able to have everything here at the service. The visitation, the funeral service, and then a reception or meal before or following any type of services. We've got that capability for that. Basically, the chapel is set up 2 equal sides so that the casket can be set at the back of the chapel prior to the service for any viewing. The family is seated. Now, whether the family chooses to be out front with the congregation or whether they would choose to be off to the right-hand side over there and have some privacy, they're able to do that where they're seated prior to service times. Then we just fill in the back seats and the other areas with friends, co-workers, church members who are attending services. We can sit generally about 150 comfortably in our 2 sides here. Maybe another 60 or so onto the side if the family doesn't choose to sit back there. Off to these other sides, there are 3 panel doorways on either side there. On the other side of those walls are what are called staterooms or viewing rooms. And we'll take a quick peek into one of those later on here. But also, those doors will slide open, and we've got availability for another 50 to 60 seats in there. So we can usually seat close to 300 in the chapel. And then, as I mentioned, that community room, we can also transfer some seating and a drop-down screen such as this and broadcast the service in there if we need another additional 50 seating for friends or so. Something that we offer also here for folks is this drop-down screen. And when we make arrangements with the family, we ask families if they'd like to bring anywhere from, say 25 to 40 pictures or so of their loved ones for a viewing time and prior to services. And we create what's called a life story video. That way, prior to services, as people are coming in and being seated, if they get here a half an hour or so before services, they're able to come in and watch this video of just different times through that person's life, from early childhood to their marriage, first job, kids, grandkids, and on up to later life and retirement. We create that video, give copies of those to our families. Once again, let them being shown during any viewing times or service times. Sometimes families choose to incorporate that into part of the service, where there'll be an opening prayer, a song maybe, some other words that are said, and then we dim the lights and show that during the service. Bring the lights back up. The pastor or whoever's officiating will continue with their service, and then we'll go on and make our way to the cemetery. Something else we do with our videos is we will download onto our website where people can come in and read the loved one's obituary on our website, penwellgablehutchinson.com, and they can see that. There's a little Windows icon. They can click that and be able to see that video also. Something else we've incorporated then with services too to keep up with technology. And as I mentioned earlier, everybody used to live in the same town, if not the same house, or a couple blocks away. Made it convenient for that short amount of time to have services. Nowadays, just as probably several of you are, if you're not from the Hutch or Reno County area, if you're from Florida or Denver or whatever the case may be, we also video record all of our funeral services here in the chapel so that we can download that video then and put on our website as well. So say, for example, if one of you guys is here from Florida and you're not able to make it back for an uncle's funeral, whatever the case may be. One of our funeral homes, say for example, if you're from Orlando, we've got a funeral home in Orlando, they'd be able to videotape that service, download it, you'd be able to go back to your dorm room this evening and watch that service. It's been very helpful for a lot of soldiers. We've got families that we've served here, that they've got loved ones that are serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, places like this, that they can't, of course, come back on a moment's notice for a service. They're able to get back in the evening or whatnot, or the military has made a special occasion for them to take some time with the military computer and be able to watch their loved one's service if they're not able to make it back through the Red Cross to come to services. So those are just a couple things that we offer here that is kind of keeping up with technology and the way that families are mobile now. At this point, we'll go ahead and step into one of our other areas, which will be our crematory behind our building, or attached to behind our building. And we'll make our way just through the back at that time. And so here in just a little bit, we'll go ahead and make our way over there. As we're making our way back here, kind of through our what used to be the family room or private room for the family, or also now we use it mostly as overflow, we'll just kind of swing by what is our AV room and our music room. What we basically have is all our controls for recording the service, broadcasting life stories. People will a lot of times bring in recorded music, whether they bring in their favorite CD to be played. Somebody like old Western songs or like classical music will play whatever the family chooses to play. During services, there may be a wide variety of music. Somebody may want an old favorite hymn like the Old Rugged Cross or Amazing Grace or typical songs, but they may want something new and modern. We play a wide variety of music. Even if it's somebody in their 80s, there may be grandchildren that have a special song that they may want played. So a lot of that recorded music can all be played. It's all done back here. Sometimes people have their church organist or pianist or soloist come in, provide the music. The microphones, organ, everything would be back here then, where those folks would stand rather than out front. Generally, the only person that would be up front giving any part of the service would be the pastor, unless the soloist or somebody chose to be up front. A lot of time, family members will be the musicians. They may choose to be up front as well. So we'll kind of pass by that small room as we make our way back through the other side. As I mentioned, as we come through here, a lot of times a family prefers privacy and not to be out front in the public with everyone. They're able to be back here behind these louvered walls where they're still able to see out and see the pastor, but it's a little more privacy as people get to not see into the room, but the families can still see out.